Hey everyone, this is Tom Pavlik, and I thought I would put together a short video on how you can load a subset of your eBird data into Excel. As you probably know, you go out to download your eBird data, and there's no parameters, there's no date filters, there's no nothing. You get a data set of all of your observations. And so more and more people are starting to run into some issues there, whether it's the row limitation within Excel, even though that's well over 1 million rows, or even if you're just loading in maybe a couple 100,000 rows, Excel can start to get pretty sluggish working with that kind of data. Whatever your reasons are, I'm going to show you how you can just load a subset of that data and maybe make it easier for you to work with that data in Excel. And all you'll need here is Excel. There's no additional software or anything else like that. So what you'll want to do is, as you see on the screen, I've got a blank workbook, right? So make sure you have a blank workbook up, and then I'm going to introduce a tool within Excel. It's called the Power Query tool. If that sounds a little technical or intimidating, don't worry about it. Especially for our purposes, it's pretty easy to use, and I'll walk you right through that with a couple of examples. So the first thing that we want to do from our blank Excel workbook is to go up to the Data tab, and then from Data tab, we're going to say Get Data, and then we're going to launch that Power Query editor. That editor will appear in a new window, but we're still within Excel here at this point. Now I'll assume that you've already downloaded your eBird data and you know where it is on your computer. That's the next thing that we need to do. We need to go out and grab that what's called CSV file. That's just the format that eBird presents this in that data set. So what we do at this point is over here on the right, we go to New Source, and then we say File, and then we select the text CSV. So let's go out and grab our eBird data. And then Excel has loaded a portion of this into the query editor just to kind of give you a sense of what it's looking like. Now, by default, it says that the delimiter is colon. Excel is saying that. Well, we need to change this to comma. All of the data in the data set, each of those fields in each of the rows is really separated by a comma. So let's select that. And yeah, this is starting to look a little bit nicer. Everything's in a nice format here. This looks good. Let's go ahead and select OK. So I'm still in this Power Query editor. And again, here's a subset of the data. This editor is just saying, here's what your data is going to look like when you load it into an Excel workbook. Well, here's where I can filter out some of my data. Let's say, for example, I only want year-to-date records. I just want to load those into Excel. Now, there's a million different options out here, but for my example, I want to go find my date field, and then I'm going to click on this down arrow next to my date. And because this is a date field, it gives me a whole bunch of different options on how I might want to filter my rows out. Okay, I could select between, and I'd get prompted for a beginning date and an end date. I could select just certain days, weeks, etc. In my example, I want my current year. So I'm going to go down here and select year, and then I'm going to say this year. And sure enough, if I look in this column, only 2023 rows are being displayed. All right, that's the year in which I'm recording this video. So current year is 2023, and that's all I have now. And now this is what I want loaded into Excel. So now that I've got that, I just go back here to this Close and Load option on the left, and I want to select this second option, this Close and Load To. So I select that. I'm now back in my workbook. Excel prompts me, like, what do you want to do here? Do you want to create just a connection to that Power Query? Or do you want to go ahead and load it into a table or some of these pivot options? We want to load it into a table. Okay, we can leave the rest of these defaults here. And sure enough, it's just gone ahead and loaded that data for 2023 only. All right. At this point, it's a good idea just to go ahead and save your workbook so you don't lose any of this data that you did. Couple of quick things I'll point out here before I let you go. If you don't like the table format, I do, but if you just want it without these drop downs next to the headings and all of that, you can really right click anywhere in your data and then come over here and say table and then convert to range. And it'll no longer be a table format. It'll just be regular Excel data format. The last thing I want to show you real quick is, well, what if I accidentally did something wrong on my filter over in the Power Query? I can go ahead and double click on my query that I created. It's going to launch that query editor again. And then over here on the right, these are the actual steps that I did during the Power Query editor. That is, I went out and got my data. I moved over to the date row, and then I put in a date filter. I can remove that filter altogether, or let's just say, for example, I wanted to do last year instead of this year, instead of the current year. I can double click on my filtered rows. Okay. It's going to bring up a dialog box that I completed when I first did this. A little bit different format, but same idea. And now instead of, it says keep rows where date is in this year, but let's say I want to do last year instead of this year. I could do that. Click OK. And then load my data back into my workbook. Now the only option here is close and load because I've already established this query connection. So I'm going to do close and load. And sure enough, it reloads into Excel based on my new query and the parameters I associated there. So pretty easy way to just load a subset of your eBird data into Excel. Thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful, and good birding.